I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this is a special edition of The Score, a weekly podcast of news and information from around the industry for the week ending September 16th. This episode is a roundtable discussion. With me, I have Nirav Gandhi, our video editor.
Hello.
Hi, Nirav. I have Jess Clayton-Berry, our reviews editor.
Hello.
And I have Adam, our hardworking staff writer.
Hello.
All right, so the first question that I just want to pose to everybody here, aside from playing games made with it, how much did you know about Unity prior to the current situation that it's developed with them?
I have known a little bit about it because my brother's been kind of learning Unity for the last 2 years in hopes of possibly putting together a game. So shout out Nikhil, I would find a different engine. But yeah, I've known a little. I feel like and I'm sure you can recall for me, but I believe in 2020 they did something that was also pretty anti-consumer, and I remember hearing about it.
2019 actually. Yes.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, I've kind of known that they were not the best people to use, but also still pretty much the best thing for indie devs, especially mobile devs, to use. But yeah, I think that's about it. I would say tangentially know about them.
Okay. Jess?
I knew nothing about them, and I'm only just hearing about how many developers were using them, actually, because I always thought that Unreal Engine was the go-to engine for indie devs. But yeah, it's after this has come through, I've just kind of realised just how many indie games that I'm aware of are using this engine, and I actually follow quite a lot of them on Twitter as well. One of them is the guy who's developing Hollow Body. It's the he also did Chasing Static a few years ago, and he's now looking at maybe trying out Unity. He says the UI, not Unity, Unreal, and he says the UI and everything is much easier to use, but he doesn't see himself moving the whole game over.
Adam?
Yeah, excuse me. I had heard about Unity before just because it's really rare to find, at least in my experience, a engine that's well known outside of Unreal. So I kind of remember hearing and seeing Unity on a bunch of games that I've been playing. And of course the CEO, this is not the first time the CEO has caused some issues for the company. I think it was a couple years ago he made some comments that were pretty terrible.
Yeah, 2019 there was some a change to the terms of service that caused some discontent. Although weirdly enough, back in 2015 he had, John Riccitiello had said, no royalties, no screwing around. And apparently, what a difference 8 years makes, huh?
Because wasn't there? Are we allowed to swear on this podcast? By the way, I don't want to. Trying to avoid it.
We're trying to avoid
it. Because I remember, I think there was a couple years ago when he was talking about loot boxes or something like that, and he was saying every developer should be developing with that in mind, and if you're not, you're an effing idiot. And I remember those comments getting pretty big.
Yeah, that might be what I was thinking of from a few years ago. I do remember that.
Where you're basically saying if you're not developing with the idea of trying to squeeze your audience for every dollar, then you're just not doing it right at this point. Which, from a business standpoint, I can understand obviously, but yeah, you don't make those kind of comments publicly.
Yeah. All right, so next question, Jess, we'll start this off here. What do you think prompted this move from Unity? I mean, they've been making money, they've clearly, been improving their profile, they're kind of the indie darling, and then suddenly they just decide, oh yeah, we're going to nuke the bridge. What do you think prompted it, and how does it square with that statement from 2015 of no royalties, no screwing around?
I honestly think it might be inspo from what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter now, called X. Because everybody said when Elon started like bringing in these monetizations onto I keep on calling it Twitter, onto X.
It's Twitter. We refuse to call it X. X is not happening, Elon. Give it a rest.
Exactly.
But
I'm gonna have to zine about this. Hold on.
Everybody said it would be the end of the platform, and it's still kind of chugging along, still churning out money. But the CEO like sold stocks of Unity before making this decision, so I'm wondering whether it's more like a test of the waters, just to see how far he can push it before it turns out to be a bad idea.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I don't know. It seems so obvious that like they went too far in the wrong direction with this announcement, but like Jess was saying, like there seems to be so many like CEOs since Elon took over Twitter that like are just making these like big, brash, extreme like ideas and like making these decisions that just do not agree with the majority, and they're just like saying, well, that's just what we're gonna do. And I don't think I don't know if that's fully clear, like thought out from their perspective. If like they knew it was going to be this big of a storm for them, of a PR nightmare. Yeah, like I don't know if anybody could have really predicted it though, to this degree.
Wizards of the Coast gave it a shot.
Yeah, there's also Wizards of the Coast. I completely forgot about that one. Yeah.
Nirav?
Yeah, I think there's probably something to be said for other large companies trying their hand at like ultra monetizing something and then walking it back sometimes. Like for instance, like Wizards of the Coast eventually did get scared enough that they walked back, but then we're talking about Elon Musk. Like he's still, like you said, he's still chugging. Like I don't think Twitter is doing as well as it was before. I'm guessing there's a lot less traffic, but we will never find out because he'll never tell us.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, it still does exist. People are still using it, you know, despite everyone yelling about how bad it is. I managed to finally pry myself off Twitter 3 weeks ago forever, which felt very good. So congratulations to Starfield Metacritic discourse for finally being the thing to turn me into the Joker and pry me away. But yeah, no, it's so weird that like I don't even want to say it's weird. It's almost to be expected at this point, just based on what other companies do. But like, it's always a calculated risk with these companies. Like, I don't think for a second we should think that they didn't know how badly this was going to go down. Like, I think they did, and they've calculated it out, and the money they'll make from charging the people who do stay on is going to outnumber the money that they'll lose from future developers moving to other engines.
Okay. Now, there has been some controversy about the new runtime fees being retroactively applied. There's been, Unity is saying, "Oh no, this is only going to apply to games going forward, or copies that are being installed going forward." But there's also a lot of feeling that it's like, yeah, you guys changed you changed the rules once. Who's to say that you're not going to do it a second time? Assuming that the new fees are not retroactively applied, and that Unity actually doesn't do something that insanely stupid, what sort of impact is that move likely to have in the indie sector in particular and the games industry as a whole?
I've heard from scrolling through the discourse a bit from a lot of developers that the ones that were actually planning on making money from their games to begin with, it's the 20p installation charge isn't what the problem is. Like, a few of them have said the problem is that this has just been sprung upon them with like there's been no warning, nothing of any sorts to say that things are going to be changing, and they're saying it's the lack of trust now, or the broken trust. That's like the biggest problem. But there is still a huge issue for the games that were going to be installed for free. that they were not going to be made. I think someone mentioned it's the a lot of the developers who make educational games, the free educational ones that they were going to hand out to schools and stuff. That's going to be a huge problem. So that's going to be like multiple installations, and they're going to be making very little, if no money, from the game itself.
Nirav?
Yeah, I think that you have a point that like the trust is pretty much broken, but there's something I've been seeing from a lot of developers, which is that like switching engines for not even just for a game in progress, but switching engines for a future game is actually a pretty daunting task, because it can take like a year or two of learning to feel comfortable with a new engine. And it's not like, and you know, while Unreal may have an easier learning curve or something like that, it still is going to be a lot of extra time for you to understand how it works, that you're basically losing money, right, for or time developing your project. And I've heard that one of the ones people are trying to switch to is called Godot engine. I was kind of looking into that a little bit. That was released a few years ago, and I think there's a good like 20 or so games that are out using it. And I think I've heard of like 3 of them, honestly. They all look pretty small. But probably the biggest one is Cassette Beasts, which came out this year. Yeah, they said it works basically the same way as Unity, and I think they started designing it back in 2019 when people were kind of getting nervous about it. And were like, okay, well, we want an alternative, so they came up with this thing that works very similarly to Godot, or to Unity rather, so it doesn't require too much relearning. But yeah, I don't know. There's also this issue of like every contract from every company has this amendment at the end, this little tiny note in the footnotes where it's like, yeah, this contract can be amended at any time, and it's something you just kind of have to sign. And that is kind of what Unity is depending on. But they're saying that like we're amending, you know, the contract that you signed earlier with new stuff. And I actually saw an interesting note on the Unity subreddit from a developer saying, hey, you know, the burden of proof is basically on Unity. Like, we don't need to sue them. Don't pay them the fees. Let them sue us. They're not going to get anywhere with it. Yeah. Which, I don't know. Like, I think if this does end up going to court, could be like a really interesting thing, because our friend Andrew from our other Discord, who is a lawyer, who kind of just gives us legal advice when we beg him. He was kind of saying that like this kind of contract, this contract stipulation exists in a lot of contracts where it can be amended, but it honestly does fall down to a judge to say like, you've amended this contract like past what a reasonable person would understand that it could be amended. So there are precedent incidences for people to say like, you changed too much about the contract since we signed it for that little footnote to hold anymore. So yeah, I'm interested to see if it does go to court. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think short term, you know, obviously the PR is going to be a disaster for them, probably for another week or so. But yeah, like everybody's been saying, like there's too many games right now probably still making Unity for like Unity to completely like not, like they're going to be fine financially short term. I think it's the long term stuff that we're, you know, we can kind of like talk about and speculate, and it's probably not going to be great for them long term. Because there's probably going to be developers who are looking at this who were about to start development on a game and are like, do I want to use Unity now? Because what's Unity going to try and pull on me in 4 years when my game's about to come out? So that kind of stuff might affect them. I don't know enough of the intricacies to know if that's even the case, you know, so who knows. But
yeah, and you are probably right. The PR, or the hottest part of the PR bubbling is probably going to be cooling down within the next week or so.
Yeah.
You know, assuming that, you know, Richard Hilo doesn't open his mouth and say something stupid between now and
also
then.
very possible.
But yeah, long term, I definitely expect that this is pretty much going to radically reduce the amount of people that are going to be picking Unity for their engine. And this actually kind of pivots over to another question that I had, or that I was wondering about. There are a lot of rumblings about potential class action lawsuits against Unity over this change. How likely are they to prevail, do you think? Adam, we'll start with you.
I'm not legally savvy enough, I guess would be the right way.
I'm not legally allowed to say.
Yeah, no. I don't know. Like, we've seen a lot of. I feel like I see a lot of these like class action discussions when a company makes a decision that shareholders or like the general public don't like, and they don't really ever seem to go anywhere, or at least they may go somewhere and we just don't hear about it in the in the public. So for my opinion, I don't know how that's going to like shake out. It's not going to be good. I'm sure people are going to try and class action lawsuit Unity over this. It just, who knows what the kind of success of that will be.
Yeah, the rumblings have actually have been more about developers than they have been regular customers. So
from that aspect, I mean, yeah, I could see that.
I mean, the developers are Unity's customers, though.
Yeah.
The rank and file gamers not so much, but the indie developers, they've probably got a better case and probably have a better sense of standing.
And it's just also like you've also got the fact that like sadly a lot of these a lot of the developers who probably use Unity like financially probably are not the most secure. They're indie developers, things like that. So what kind of lawyer fees, expenses on that end, will they be able to afford that kind of stuff? It's all, I don't know, it's very interesting.
Jess?
I think this conversation's a bit too American for me to understand. We don't often. I don't really know about suing or anything.
You've got barristers and lawyers in England.
Yeah, don't you guys like put on those big wigs and just like hit each other with mallets? Is that how court goes there?
We don't use them. Like when something like this happens, we're just like, oh, that's a bit shit, isn't it? And we just go on by day. The French are probably rioting about it right now as we speak.
I'm liking them more and more.
I like both of these ideas more than just like settling it in court. Let's get wigs. Let's get riots going. Let's just do all of that. People in wigs rioting. That's what we need for Unity.
Yeah, I believe that was called the Reign of Terror.
Well, maybe not then.
Yeah, I actually just saw on a subreddit here I was looking through for new stuff about that, but there was a kind of collective ultimatum open letter from a bunch of indie developers that they are immediately cutting off all their Iron Source and Unity ads until this is fixed.
Hell yeah.
Basically, let's see, it's Azure Games, Voodoo, Homa, Century Games, Crazy, blah, blah, blah. There's like 30 developers in here. So basically the idea is that they're going to just stop giving them ad revenue money, and if you guys don't like it, come after us. Yeah, so.
But in the idea or the notion of a class action lawsuit by a group of indie devs, do you think that if the revenue choking doesn't work, are they, how likely are they to prevail if it does escalate to, okay, bring out the lawyers?
Yeah, I also just saw that their stock price has dipped only 10% since this announcement, which is interesting too. So for something, it seems that like and generally that indicates is the big spenders who are like, the higher up Wall Street people are seeing this as like also a thing that will overall smooth out and be more profitable for the company in the long run.
Moving on. Friday, Polygon reported that a Unity employee working in an out-of-state location made a threat on social media which prompted the temporary closure of offices in San Francisco and Austin. Is something like this indicative of internal issues within Unity, do you think? Derek?
I'm going to try and look for this, but I saw somebody break down that there's actually 3 board members that recommended this thing, this change in Unity. It didn't come... The CEO is supporting it, of course, but it didn't come from him. I think he's just kind of the face of the company.
Yeah.
But I saw that this has been something that has apparently been being cooked up for a long time, and in fact is possibly a watered down version of what they actually wanted to do. Like they actually wanted to charge much more. So this is like a compromised version of the thing they actually wanted to do.
Jeez.
I will try and find this, but somebody had like some financial reports that they scanned through for this info. But anyway, yeah, y'all.
All right, Jess, your thought?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I don't. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's too early days to know for sure what's going on inside the company at the moment. This could have been like a well-known thing throughout the company that was going to happen. This could have been something that was jumped on the other employees just as it was jumped on their clients. Yeah.
Yeah, just to interject, one of the employees at Unity did say that none of the ground floor employees knew about this until they like all saw it on social media. This was not something that the company was told about.
Lovely. So, I mean, you expect death threats from irritated gamers, but from an employee, it is kind of shocking.
But if you think of it from an employee's point of view, so when we first heard about this, a lot of people were saying it's going to be the end of Unity. Can you imagine having worked there for so many years, and then the higher ups have come up with this like scheme that's going to potentially destroy the company, and like you end up losing your jobs? You're going to be pissed off. You're going to be like, why would you do that? You've like put the whole company at risk.
Yeah.
Fools! You've killed us all.
Yeah, exactly.
Adam?
Yeah, just to follow up on that point just now, it does feel like within the games industry there is a bit of a like, we can move on, but we're not going to forget what you did. Like, I feel like with all the fallout from Ubisoft over the couple years, like, all you've been hearing recently about Ubisoft is how they can't get enough talent in, how they're struggling to make games because they don't have the talent. It's hard to, get people to work at Ubisoft now. And Unity might have that same issue, like, moving forward, where, like, people just don't want to stay there or don't want to work there because, like, why would I work at a company that, like, is going to make these brash decisions out of nowhere and affect my possible income and affect how I'm going to make money for myself and my family. So, like, maybe there are people who are going to be leaving the company in droves, and that maybe is how Unity goes under in a way, is like they just can't stock the shelves with new talent. But
that Star Wars game actually got pushed back because Quantic Dream couldn't get people to work on it.
Yeah,
that's why it got delayed.
Exactly. It feels like the video game industry is still kind of there are ramifications for your crappy decisions, basically. It takes time still, of course, but maybe something like that happens to Unity down the road. It's just, I think it's too early to say for fact what may or may not happen for them.
So, bearing all that in mind, what are your thoughts that what can we as gamers do to express our displeasure at Unity, other than, bringing out pictures of guillotines and, Richatilo's head in the basket?
Hold on, I'm getting my powdered wig.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
The French will riot, of course.
Yeah, I mean, as consumers, it's hard because we are not the customers of Unity. Like, we don't have a lot of say over how much money they make, even if for the first time in human history gamers actually were to vote with their wallet, it wouldn't matter because they're not the customer base here. It's developers, and so and again, like, it's just such a shit show. Sorry, I mean a slop show. No cursing. Slop show.
Hell yeah.
That because game projects take, like, these indie developers from start to finish, you're looking at, like, 3 to 4 years at least to make these games. And once you're like a year into that, like, you can't just start over. You can't just switch to a different product. So this product does have, like, a certain hold over people that in other industries it would not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Adam?
I mean, ultimately that might be what keeps Unity around, unfortunately, is just, like, they have already found, like, a groove, like, for people who don't want to use Unreal, like there really are limited options still out there outside of the one that Narav brought up earlier, that Cassette Beast was using. And maybe that's a engine that starts to gain in popularity, and maybe that's the engine that takes over for Unity, and Unity fades away. But it's going to be really tough.
At least 10 years away,
Yeah.
for us to see that.
I mean, I think for as far as gamers go and what gamers can do, I think it's just like, look online at producers and developers who use Unity and see what they suggest, because I feel like that they would know best as to how we can help them, or what.
Yeah, definitely not suggesting a boycott of Unity games, because that literally just hurts the developers.
Exactly. There's no like easy way to like express your disdain outside of just yelling at people online in this situation.
The thing is, with this situation, it's all like theoretical. Like, people are saying, what happens if someone has an overnight success and 1 million people install their game overnight? Like, what happens then? And I think it's just like a case of waiting until that situation happens, because that might be a court-worthy case for someone to have become in debt overnight because their game like blew up unexpectedly.
Right. Well, think about Among Us. I mean, that game does use Unity. That game had all of like 100 installs until mid-2020, and then very suddenly there's 10 million people playing it at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's that. I mean, that's a good case of like those people would have been bankrupt.
Yeah.
And like also we like. It seems like Unity have tried to explain how they're going to like figure out downloads of games that use Unity, but like everybody seems to know that isn't like that seems to be bunk. Like it doesn't seem to even Unity doesn't even seem to know how they're going to do this.
I also want to add a thing that's happened yesterday, I think, which is that Unity said there was an amendment to their thing where you could be exempt from this if you run Unity ads in your game. So this is an interesting thing now, because so that's like, if you have like a free-to-play game for mobile or whatever and you want to run ads in it, like, yeah, sure. But then like, if we're talking about I don't know, like what's it, there are plenty of like premium games that do use Unity, but what they're asking for in exchange is basically for like full ad tracking data on people who are playing games, and then using that for ads for their other games. So like either way, what they're doing is like, I don't know if this is meant to be like a twofold play where they're like, here's a really horrible thing we could do to you, or you could take this really bad thing instead that's a little less bad.
Yeah.
Like, is that the final? That's my kind of Alex Jones conspiracy. Like, that I think they might have introduced this like thing that's like holy shell. What do you guys? What did they say?
You say
no,
holy moly.
Holy moly! Holy macaroni! This is really, really bad, and we can't physically just do this. We can't make the games like this. But on the other hand, now, okay, well, if you run Unity ads in your game and let us track all the player data, like all the time, so that we can get data for our ads, then yeah, you can avoid those pesky fees. So part of me does think that was the plan the entire time, and that a lot of developers are just going to end up taking that route with the data tracking.
And it also might be a thing where like Unity is talking up like a big game, like, yeah, I mean, this is how we're going to figure out how to take money from all these developers. But like when they have to start collecting that money, like some of these big companies are probably going to push back a little bit, and like depending on the success, of those pushbacks, like those things are going to go to court. Probably they're going to be decided in court, and what those court decisions are is going to affect how these other smaller developers probably deal with Unity. And if Unity loses a case like that, like all these other smaller developers are going to be like, well, we're not going to pay you either. Like they didn't, and they got away with it. So why are we going to do the same thing? So situations like that are even going to be very interesting.
Yeah, if in that scenario a precedent will have been established and people will be following the precedent, and kind of thumbing their nose at Unity, saying, "Make us."
Yeah, exactly.
So let's also not forget though that there are some like titans that are involved in this now. It's not just these indies, because like Nintendo has Pokemon Go is made in Unity. This is going to apply to Pokemon Go. Then Microsoft has their like Fallout Shelter and their like Elder Scrolls card games. Those are both made in Unity. Then we have Disney, like Marvel Snap is made in Unity. That thing is gigantic. That is going to cost Disney a lot of money. Like these companies are going to get involved, and like Hearthstone is made in Unity. Like so suddenly Activision Blizzard is now involved too. So you've got these giant companies that like, and don't get me wrong, I hate that we are in the stage of late stage capitalism where we have to rely on big companies to fight another big company so that little companies don't suffer.
Yeah.
But that may be where we are now. And I mean, I don't see like Nintendo and Microsoft like sitting aside and letting that kind of thing happen, you know?
Yeah, never go up against Nintendo, Disney, and court.
Isn't there also a small game named Genshin Impact that uses Unity?
Yeah, there is a little tiny game you might have heard of. Not actually just Genshin, but also their new game Honkai Star Rail.
Yeah,
both on Unity. So they're and I know MiHoYo is not like the biggest developer. Obviously, their game is huge, but their parent company is, I think, like the third biggest company in China. So I think they're probably not going to be happy about this.
Yeah. So like these kinds of companies will be able to stick up to Unity, and you know, if they find success, those smaller developers are going to follow suit, I would imagine.
Entirely likely. All right. So final thoughts.
Storm the gates.
Let's say 1 year from now. Okay, 2024. We're getting out of summer. We're just into fall.
Silk Song's just come out.
What is the most likely outcome for Unity in the face of all this? 1 year down the road, do you think? Nirav?
I think, like I said, my guess is that developers who are just starting their games are going to move on to a different engine. Those who are already at least a few months, maybe a year into it, are going to stick with it and pay the price or live with the data tracking thing. And I feel the retroactive nature of this thing is the thing that's not going to hold up in court. I think that if you start using Unity, I think the thing that's going to end up happening after Nintendo and friends get involved is if you start making your game or start using the engine after January 1st, 2024, then it applies to you. But I think the retroactive thing is not going to hold up in court. That's my guess.
Okay, Jess?
Yeah, I agree. I think I think also the guidelines of this new contract change are still a little bit unclear. And I think once those have been cleared a bit, if this retroactive thing is like a thing, that's going to be like the real issue. I think anything about like future games, I think that's just going to kind of blow over after a bit. Like once people have got the choice whether to go with Unity or not, it's no longer going to be an issue. Like people will decide whether to go with a different engine or to go with Unity and pay 20p per installation.
Adam?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everyone else. Like, I think a year from now, Unity will still exist. They will probably have a lighter amount of people who are using Unity Engine for their stuff. There may be a lawsuit or two that they are as well dealing with. But they seem to be just moving forward and willing to eat the PR hit for now. And it'll be interesting to see, like, if Unity goes away, it's going to take longer than a year as is. So
yeah, I also found I just want to throw out a number that I think makes it very clear that this is not going to fly as it is. In 2022, Pokemon Go has been downloaded over 2 billion times, and that would mean Nintendo owes Unity $400 million.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen.
The company that named one of their adorable mascots after a lawyer, I think they'll be ready for that fight if it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat, although I'm always looking for the triumph of hope over experience.
Yeah.
I'm kind of expecting that at the very least, Richatilo will be booted out in a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anticipating that yes, Unity is going to be shedding a lot of developers. And as much as people may want to say, yes, we're in deep on Unity, I think some people are still going to say, you know what, screw it. I'll take the hit in lost productivity to switch over to an engine that I know isn't going to stab me in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it is going to be a case by case basis for developers, but some of them may look at it, particularly the indies who are sinking in, $100 here, $100 there, a weekend now and again to work on their game. They may decide, yeah, I'll take this hit if it means I'm out from under your thumb.
Yeah, I think you'll have some developers who can do that, will do that, but it'll be tough.
Yeah, and it will be right, but it won't be easy.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. You can find other news articles along with guides, reviews, and features on our website, GameLuster.com. The opening music for the score was written and performed by Nirav Gandhi. I'd like to thank Nirav, Jess, and Adam for joining us today. I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this has been a special edition of The Score. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks. Make sure to keep an eye out for my 5,000-word review of Starfield coming soon.